Hey, this is Goldie again. I recently got an opportunity to work with a Google Cloud customer use case, and this use case is a bit interesting. So I thought maybe I should make a video just in case if you have a similar use case. So first, I'll explain the use case, and then maybe I'll show you prospective solution, and then we can set it up together in case if you have that similar use case. Okay, so here are the use case details. Customer is in business of building web applications and websites for their customers, and at any given time they would have a few customers whom they're working with. So maybe they're working with client A and client B and client C and developing web applications for these customers. Now during the build phase, when they are building web apps for their customers, these web applications should not be publicly accessible, right? So they should be behind the login, at least the private pages of those applications. And they have these applications deployed on Google Cloud Run. And on the other side, they are using Okta as their identity provider, and they wanted to bypass Google's native authentication and leverage Okta as their identity provider, because that's what does their centralized identity management. So this flowchart might give you a bit of idea. I'm taking example of two separate web applications, client-a.domain.com and client-b.domain.com. These web apps are running on Google Cloud Run. Public pages of these applications can be accessed by anyone. Of course, they are public, but the private pages of these applications should only be accessed by respective client users. So if it's client-a.domain.com, then only people who belong to client A should be able to access it, and same case for client B users. So this is the use case. So now let me talk about the solutioning side of it, and then I'll show you how to set that up in your Google Cloud Console and in Okta and other places with the demonstration too. So on the solution side, we understand that our applications are running on Google App Engine, which will be accessed by multiple clients. I mean, each client will have its set of users, and those users should be able to access only their respective application. And for that, we will put a load balancer, HTTPS load balancer. We will front end our Cloud Run applications with it. And there are two reasons essentially to put a load balancer in place. First one is that it will allow us to use Google's identity aware proxy. And second, it can help us leverage host path rules, where we can say, well, /login or /private pages should go for authentication. The rest of the pages should be accessible to anyone. Now on top of load balancer, we will have identity aware proxy, and identity aware proxy has native support for Google IAM or Google Identities. However, in this specific customer use case, they are leveraging third-party IDP, which happens to be Okta, my ex-employer. So we will need to leverage the preview of external identities with identity aware proxy. So we'll have that in place. And now to leverage external identities, we will also need to leverage Google's identity platform, which is Google's customer identity solution. So where we will have multiple tenants within the identity platform, and each of those tenants will then have a dedicated application inside Okta. It can be SAML or OpenID Connect applications inside Okta. And then inside Okta, we will have separate groups for these clients. For example, client A will have its own group and with its own memberships, and these members would be the users that client A wants to give access to the application which is running on Google Cloud Run. This way, when client A wants to access private pages, they will need to go via Okta, and they should be able to access Cloud Run application if they are a member of client A group, because that's where we will be defining the authorization in our SAML or OpenID Connect application. So this is the high-level solution that I'll be working on in this video. Now, before I share my screen and start doing stuff, let me just explain the solution steps at high level. First, we will create a new project in Google Cloud Console, and we will deploy a couple of applications in Cloud Run, and then we will set the load balancer so that it acts as a front end for these Cloud Run applications. We will block a direct access on these Cloud Run and only have load balancer pass the traffic to these Cloud Run applications. Then we will set up identity proxy with external identities, and for that we will need to do some setup in identity platform, including setting up the OpenID or SAML a connection with Okta, and finally we will do the testing and troubleshoot if needed. Okay, so with that, let's start our first step, which is to create a sample app on Google Cloud Run. Okay, so this is the new project that I just created. It's called Cloud Run IAP Demo, and we will start from scratch. Now, before even creating containers on Cloud Run, let me first create a service account, because by default Cloud Run will leverage your Compute Engine default account, so it's not recommended to use that. Let's create a service account which we will use to create Cloud Run containers, and let's call it Cloud Run IAP Demo. Okay, and then assign this role to myself so that I can impersonate and create okay, so I will now copy this, and let's go to Cloud Run. I'll create a new service. Let's just test with a sample container. Instead of hello, I will say client A, maybe. Central is fine. I'll just go with the defaults. Authenticated. Okay. All I need to do is just pick the service account that I created. Instead of default, let's go with the one that we created. And let's say create. So create this. So as this is creating, let's go ahead and create one more. So I'll go create service, and this time let's go the sample container, but this time we will say client B, and allow unauthenticated, and then security. Cloud Run, and by the way, allow unauthenticated, we will be dealing with it at the network level when we create a load balancer. So I'll go ahead and create that. So now both our services are in process. Actually, one got created. So what we will do now is, if we go to its URL, we see that it's running fine, but we want to stop the direct access to this. So what we will do is we will say instead of all, let's do internal and only allow traffic from a load balancer. As soon as we do that, this should stop working. So now if I go to it, I shouldn't be able to access it, which is perfect. Let's do the same for client B. I can access it by default. Okay, it's working. And now I will say internal, save it. Now, I mean, in case if this is your use case, of course, you can leverage Terraform and other mechanisms to, make it quick. I just wanted to show the logic behind the whole solution. Okay, so now this should not have direct access. So our step one here is complete. Okay, so we just completed the step one. We created a couple of apps on Google Cloud Run. Now let's move to step two, which is to set up a load balancer. So let me share my screen and let's set it up. Okay, so for that, I'll simply go to load balancing. Okay, and then now we will, what is it? Okay, the reason I'm going with classic is in case if you need to leverage JOT tokens and customize the headers, only classic one supports it for now, so I'll go with it and enable the Compute Engine API. Okay, so Compute Engine API is now enabled. Let's start with our load balancer and let's call it Cloud Run IAP Demo. Okay, and create the front end. There was an extra space there. Okay, so HTTPS, and let's create a new IP address for this. Okay, let's reserve it. Okay, certificate, I'll create a new one and I will just go with this name. You may consider uploading your own if that's needed. I'll go with the Google default one, and let's do this as my demo domain. Okay, create. Okay, so HTTP to HTTPS, I'll do that. And now front end is ready. Let's go to the backend and let's create a new backend service. And let's call it the same IAP demo. Okay, not the instance group. Our resource is the Cloud Run. And then now let's create backends for this. And here we will create two separate backends because requirement is that few of the pages of the web applications or website might be public, so anybody can access it and get additional public feedback, but the private pages or the login pages should be restricted behind the authentication. So we will create two separate, but the application is running in one Cloud Run instance itself. So we will create two separate backends, but point both of these backends to the same Cloud Run app, and then leverage host and path rules to send the some path rules to the authentication page. So let's call it. We will call it front end. Okay. Region, I think we took central, so and ours is Cloud Run client A. Okay, so create. Now this is the demo, so I don't want to incur cost, so I'll disable CDN, and I will also not go with Cloud Armor, but if this is the production, sure, please feel free to leverage those resources. So okay, so I just created the front end. Now let's do one more. So this time I will call it backend, and point it to serverless. Let's create a serverless, and let's call it backend. Region again is central, Cloud Run, and this time we are picking client A because we haven't touched client B yet. So far we are creating two backend services for client A itself. Created. Again, I'll disable the CDN and no Cloud Armor rules yet. So I'll go ahead and say OK. So now both of our backends. Just make sure I name it right. Okay, so now we have front end and backend both pointing to our client A Cloud Run instance. Now I'll go to host and path rules, and there we can leverage it. So for example, we will say by default let everybody go to front end, and we will not restrict it. But for other one, which is backend, let us say I think this is the domain that I chose, right? Okay, we'll see that. And then I will say either slash login, or maybe say slash private, or you can leverage the pattern here if required. And I'll say these should go to backend. Okay, review and finalize. That's fine. I'll go ahead and click on create. Okay, and our load balancer is ready. So this is the IP we got, and our cert hasn't provisioned yet. In the meantime, I can go ahead and do the mapping for the domain. So I'll do domains.google.com. That's where I'm hosting my domain. Gold Aurora, DNS, manage custom records. Take a few seconds. Okay, so it's there. Let's go at the bottom. Okay, and let's create a new record. Let's create a record pointing to this IP. And then our domain is this. Okay, so this is done. Let's save it. Okay, so that's done. It might take a few minutes for this cert to be active and ready to use. So I'll pause the video and come back here once it's status is active. Okay, so it took about 5 minutes to be active. So now our certificate is up. So what I'll do is I'll quickly test it out. Okay, it's working fine, and it's only working via the load balancer because we disabled direct access to our client A and client B application. So if I go directly, it shouldn't work, okay, but it works via the load balancer. So, okay, so we just completed step 2, which was setting up the load balancer. Now let's move to step number 3, which is to configure identity aware proxy. Okay, so I'll go back to my GCP console and I'll say identity aware proxy. Okay. This is the first time we are setting it up on this fresh new project, so we need to enable API. It may take a few seconds. Okay, so we'll identity aware proxy, and then it says before you can configure it, you need to configure auth screen. So we'll say configure auth screen, and we need to choose the application type. We are going to leverage Okta for authentication, so I'll just keep it as internal. Application name, let's say client A maybe, and support email, I'll just choose my email. I'll skip the rest of the stuff, and then email address for developer, I'll put mine. Okay, save and continue. We don't have any need for specific auth scopes, so I'll just skip everything here and go back to dashboard. This is done, so I'll go back to identity aware proxy again now, and hopefully it allows me to see the backend and front end that we created. Okay, so now we see our two backend services in the IAP. One is front end and one is backend that we created in previous step when we were setting up load balancer. If you recall, front end, it's public, so anybody should be able to access it. But in case if somebody tries to go via /login or /private, then they should be redirected to authentication via this backend. So we'll turn on IAP on this, and if you want, you can surely go ahead and read the configuration requirements and understand it. Once you're satisfied, go back and turn it on. So what we just did is we have put our demo backend service behind the Google native IAM. So identity aware proxy will be proxying anybody who is trying to access this backend. Okay, so let me go to my domain and go to new incognito window. If I just go to this domain This is the public or the front end page, so it should work fine. But if we go via the login page or the /private, then it should take us to authentication to client A, which is fine. This is what we were expecting. Now, before we configure external identities to work with IAP, let us just test the Google native authentication and make sure it's working fine. And then we can call this step complete. So I'll select this and I will add principal here, and I will add myself to test it out. So I'll say, okay, and I will assign it called IAP Secured Web App User. Call it save. And now when I go here to this application, I should be able to access it. I'm not sure if it's going to take a couple of minutes to reflect the permissions that I just gave to myself. Okay, yeah, it says you don't have access, so it may take a couple of minutes maybe. Okay, so it came up now. Okay, so it's working fine now. So our native IAP is working fine. And with that, we can complete our step number 3. Okay, so after our step number 3, now we need to move to step number 4, which is to set up identity platform to connect identity-aware proxy to work with external identities. And then we will configure our third-party IDP, which is Okta in this case, but I'll be setting up OpenID Connect application, so it doesn't really matter. You can hook it up with Azure or Ping or any other identity provider. So let's go back to the screen. Okay, so here, coming back to the IAP screen, when while I have this demo backend selected, you will see here it says use external identities for authorization. So I'll click on start. And here it says configure identity platform. So let's enable it because this is the first time. So we might need to enable the API. And it may take a few seconds, and then we will configure providers in it. Okay, so it's enabled. I'll go ahead and click on add a provider. We need to connect it with Okta. And for that, we have two options. Either we can go with SAML or OpenID. I prefer going with OpenID. So I'll click on that. But if SAML, I might make another video to show that. So OpenID Connect, and let's call it client A. Okay, and then client ID, I can simultaneously log into my Okta instance so that I can copy and paste some information. Do a push. Just a second. Okay, let me just click on approve on my mobile device. Okay, now I'm inside my Okta. Let's go to the admin dashboard. And in admin dashboard, we will go to applications and let's create a new OIDC app. Let's call it web app. Okay, next, and name, we can put client A. We'll come back to the sign-in redirect URIs later. For now, let me just say save. We found some error. What's the error? Okay, let's skip the group assignment for now. Click on save, and now we got client ID. So I'm gonna copy that, paste it here. Okay, client secret, copy it, paste the secret. Okay, and then sign on. Okay, let's do issuer as my domain. In your case, it might be different. Not might be, it will be different. Okay, and I'm not taking this to put as authorization callback URL in my Okta configuration because I'll be leveraging identity-aware proxy provided login page. So I'll just click on save here, and then I'll go back to identity-aware proxy, And with the backend selected, it says use external identities for authorization. I will click on start, and it says, so are you sure you're going to change the identity system from Google native IAM to external provider via identity platform? I'll say yeah, let's change it. And here now we see the provider that we created, so I'll select that, and it gives you two options to create a login page where IAP will be redirecting unauthenticated users. In case if you need more customization, of course you will go with I will provide my own, click on learn more, and then you can follow the documentation to customize your login page. In my case, I'll go with create a sign-in page for me. There is less customization available, but the use case that I'm working on, it's okay. My users just need to see a screen where they can just click on login with Okta and then provide credentials, come back and see the application. So I'll go with this, and then region, I'll go where my Cloud Run app is hosted, so I'll say central. That is it. Click on save. Okay, and it's working. So it's creating a new Cloud Run instance for me where this will be this page will be hosted, and then it will also add the authorized domain, which is done. And now it says add this URL as a valid redirect URI for auth providers. Okay, that's what we are interested in. So I will copy this, and instead of just pasting this, you will see enable IAP on external identities Google. Okay, enable external identities. If you go there, hosting a sign-in page with Cloud Run, and here you will see a few things that we need to take care of. Okay, first thing is that whatever the login URL is, we need to append this as the authorized redirect URIs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is copy this page. Okay, go to Okta and click on edit in my application, delete the local host, okay, add the URI, and after this URL I will append this. Okay, okay, this is done. I can also, if required, add it to sign out, so I'll click on save. Okay, this is done here. And what else? Okay, so I will close it now, and let's go to Okta and do a couple of things in Okta. First, we will go to Okta and we'll create a new group, and let's call this group Client A. Okay, and in this Client A group, we will be adding the users who belong to Client A. So here I'll assign people, and I'll just simply put myself here. Okay, so I'll add it, so anybody else shouldn't be able to access those private pages because I'm the only one assigned to this group, and then we will assign this group to the app we just created. And now let's go back to applications, and I forgot the name of the application. I think it was Client A. Yeah, good. Okay, Client A, and then we will go to assignments, and under assignments, let us assign it to groups, and here we can search for Client A. Yeah. So now whoever is part of that group should be able to access this application. Now with that in place, let's just test it out. And I took actually very long URL. I should have taken a shorter one. It's hard to remember. Okay. Now when I go here, everything works fine, but now let me go to the sensitive page, and it should redirect me Okta. Okay, very nice. And now let me enter my Okta credentials here. Okay, and password. Okay, send me a push. Approve. And let's see. Okay, so it is working fine. Our setup is working fine, but I think I missed one step, which is recommended. So let me show you that. If I go back and go to Cloud Run, you will notice that this is the page or login page which IAP created for us, and I can click on this one, and if I go to the YAML file here, you will notice that by default it took my default Compute Engine account, which is not recommended here. So what I will do now is I will create a dedicated service account, which we will use here, service account. Okay, and I will create a service account and I will call it CRIAP demo. Okay, and then I will click on create and continue. So now we need to add a few permissions to our service account. So if I come back here, it says before you begin, okay, and then it says these are the 3 predefined roles that we should assign: Identity Toolkit Viewer, IAP Settings Admin, and Compute Network Viewer. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll say IAP Settings Admin. Okay, add another, and another was I think Compute Network Viewer. Okay, and the last one I think was something Toolkit Viewer, I think. Let's just confirm. Yeah, Toolkit Viewer. Okay, so with that, let's continue because this will be service to service. So we'll just go ahead and create on done. And now let's copy this service account. Okay, and go back to Cloud Run. And under Cloud Run, I will go to this hosted login page that IAP created, and here we will replace the default Compute Engine account. Let me click on edit. Oops. Delete, add, and let's call this SA changed and deploy the new version. Resource name must only use lowercase letters. What did I do? Okay, so it's getting deployed, and if everything goes fine, now we should be able to our application via Okta. Okay, so now this seems to be ready. Chrome profile, public page, good. Private page, redirect to Okta. Well, actually, instead of assigning this, let me first put another user here, and this user is not part of client A group. So though this user will be able to authenticate to Okta, but is not authorized to access our client A application. So let's see that. So it redirects to Okta. So password. Second authenticator. Okay. 0 Okay. Verify. So it says please authorize the required permission to sign into this application because this user is not authorized. And if I go to my Okta instance in the second tab, you will see that I'm logged into Okta, but I can't log into that application because I'm not authorized to. That app is not assigned to me. So what I'm going to do now is sign out from here. Okay, and let me, sorry if I'm clicking too fast. Okay, I just broke that session, and I will now go back to the app, and this time I will log in with the user that is authorized to access client A application. Okay, send me a push, approve, and if things go fine, I should be able to access my Cloud Run application because I'm authorized to. Okay, this is working fine. So we logged into client A. So this is running as expected, which is great. But now if we go back to the solutioning, you will notice that so far we have achieved it for client A. So only client A users can access the application that is assigned to client A users. Public pages are accessible to anyone. Private pages are behind Okta. Now we need to do that for client B, client C, and so on. So I'm not going to configure client B now because it will be exactly the same process that we did, but I will show you something that might be helpful, which is a provision of tenants inside Identity Platform. So Identity Platform, as you see, it's a project-based resource. In our case, because we are hosting these web applications, multiple web applications inside one project, it won't work in case if we create a new project and go that route. We can follow an easy way here, which is to leverage tenants. So when I go to tenants, it might say multi-tenants is not enabled. To manage tenants, enable it under settings. So let's go to settings first, and then security, allow multi-tenants. So, okay, so I just enabled it. Now let's go back to tenants here, and now I can add a tenant. Okay, call it client B, and it, you can have multiple, and I'll click on save. Okay, so I just created a tenant. So if I go to scopes and if I click on tenant client B, which I just created, and go to providers, you will notice that just like we initially started with configuring providers in the main project, now within each of the tenants that we create, we can add providers. So maybe I can create one more OpenID here, and I can call it, let's say, client B Okta app, okay, client C Okta app, and so on. So you can map this with the help of tenants. You can create tenants, and each tenant then can have its own providers, and those providers can be anything like OpenID Connect provider or SAML or Google, etc. So I just wanted to show you the functionality of tenants too. With that, I think we already did the testing and troubleshooting. Everything is working as expected. With that, I will say thank you for investing your time. If you're here till now, that means you really have this use case. So thank you. I hope it might help you a bit. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, do not hesitate to put that under this video, and I'll be happy to collaborate. Take care. Bye-bye.